Good afternoon, Saints fans, and welcome to another edition of the Saints Insider Podcast. I'm Zach Ewing with Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan. Some exciting news. What do we have there, Luke? Abide no hatred. Well, we do abide some hatred from time to time, unfortunately, in this business, but that's okay.
Only if it's for Duncan.
I'll take all the hate.
We like all feedback. Yeah, Duncan will take the hate. We're going to talk some roster cutdowns today. We're going to talk some Demario Davis comments. He was fired up today, and think Saints fans should be too. And we'll talk Saints Texans coming up on Sunday and what to watch for in the final preseason game. Do us a favor if you're watching on the SaintsOnNOLA.com YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. We're getting dozens every day, actually. We're up a couple hundred over the last week. So go ahead and become the next one. Hit the subscribe button, sign up for notifications. Then you know when we go live. You know, hey, I got to go back and watch that, whatever the case might be. Luke's posting videos from practice every day. So absolutely, we want you to do that. Jerry's here. Hello, Jerry. Tedder says, Jeff Duncan, why do you hate Michael Thomas? I guarantee you Jeff does not hate Michael Thomas. And we're going to talk about Michael Thomas, actually, also.
There's lots to talk about today. Yeah. I think everyone thinks that if you have any type of observation or reporting that's done on a player that's not 100% positive this time of year, that you're a hater. That's the unfortunate world we're in right now. I've got nothing against Michael Thomas, just trying to fill you in on what's going on with camp.
Yeah, let's just speak.
Go ahead, Luke.
Let me back up Jeff here for a second, because I think all he's saying is, and all he said in his piece is that Mike, you should not be expecting Mike to go out there and catch 150 balls again this year. He has not been the same player that he was 3 years ago before these injuries, and he's still working his way back. I think he's making progress. It's not like Jeff is saying he's going to be a bad player. It's just I think it'd be foolish to expect him to go out and be an all-pro wideout after missing 3 seasons.
Yeah, if you've take the time to read the column, which would always help, have an informed opinion on what I'm writing, you'd see that I said there are a lot of good things he's doing, and then there's some things that he's rusty at, and there's some routes that he's rusty on and might always be rusty on because he's had multiple procedures on his feet, and that's just something that we should all expect. Anybody that's ever been cut open knows it's very difficult, traumatic to your body. So coming back from that, especially as many as he's had and at the age he's had, it's understandable that he's not the guy he was. And that's all. I've said that a million times. But so that's all I'm trying to say. There was a lot of early hype about Michael Thomas, people, reporting on his breathlessly on every play he made in practice. And I've covered the team for 24 years. I know what I'm watching when I see practice. And it's also informed by talking to people on the team, very high-level people within the organization that inform my opinion. So I'm not making it up out of thin air. It's always backed by sources that are at the highest level in the organization, and they'd say the exact same thing. And like Luke said, he's no one's saying he's not going to get there. We're saying he's not there yet, and he said it himself, and everyone on the team has basically said it. So I'm not sure where all this is coming from, but let's move on.
Yeah, well, actually, I wasn't going to start there, but Michael Thomas had a good day of practice. We can hit on that right now, and I think to your point, Jeff, people who follow us are not going to get the positive side of things all the time, and they're not going to get the negative side of things all the time. We're going to tell the truth as best we can. This team is not going to go 16-1, 15-2. Like, I don't think anyone thinks that realistic. We're also not going to sit here and tell you that they're not any good, because I think they are pretty good. So, but let's talk real quick about Thomas and look what you saw in practice today, because I know he did sort of show signs. And honestly, yesterday I was at practice and he had a little bit of a rough day yesterday. At one point, he kind of threw the ball across the turf because he was upset he didn't come up with one. But today he kind of beasted out.
Yeah, look, and I think he actually had a pretty good day of practice yesterday, right? Because he's still missing some elements of his game. Like, I think he's still figuring out the timing and connection of the goal line fades with Derek Carr. That's just kind of been a consistent area where they've been, kind of cross signals during the training camp practices. But I think for 2 straight days now, we've seen him make plays that are really, really encouraging. Yesterday, he caught a touchdown on a goal line play on one of those Lucy routes that he just ate on in 2019. The little option routes where he's kind of breaking one way or another depending on the defense's coverage. So that was really encouraging. And then today, he caught 9 balls on 10 targets in practice today. And, not all of them were easy catches. He was creating some separation. And, there was one in particular where he was running across the field and Derek Carr threw it late and behind him. And he made a great adjustment on the ball and plucked it out of the air. And these are the things that have made him special in the past. And these are the things that we just had not seen him do on a consistent basis throughout training camp. But this is why you get a month before the season to practice and to go through preseason games and go to joint practices and to figure these things out. He's making the strides. I don't think I'm ready to say right now that he is going to be this team's number 1 receiver. I mean, that is clearly Chris Olave. I don't even know if he's their number 2 target because I think Juwan Johnson's had a very, very nice camp and it clearly has a great connection with Derek Carr. But Michael Thomas is definitely better today than he was on July 26th or whenever they were reported for training camp.
Yeah, I was going to say, just chiming in and just adding a little to that. I mean, this is practice number 20, I believe, or 21, whatever it is. But I thought today was actually probably the best practice I'd seen Mike have since he's been back. I just thought he did all the things that we're accustomed to seeing him do. And even yesterday, I thought his separation was excellent. I mean, he was getting open and they were getting the ball to him. So I do see the progress. And I think everybody said the same thing. I mean, he doesn't have to catch 149 balls this year. This team has too many weapons there won't even be a need for him to do that. So, but I do think he's definitely getting better, getting back to.
And look, if Michael Thomas is this team's 3rd target, that's a problem for defenses. If he's anywhere near what he was in 2018, 2019, and so that's a reason for optimism. And I think it's a good kind of transition into Demario Davis comments today. Demario Davis returned from injury. First full practice back was today. He talked to the media. He was fired up. And he said Dennis Allen's got swagger and that leads to the rest of the team's swagger. And that if you're a fan of the Saints, you should be excited. And Dunk, this is kind of an overarching theme of this camp. Like everyone's optimistic in August. I mean, that's 32 teams across the NFL think that they're going to be better than the consensus. But this Saints team, it really seems to be at another level this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we even wrote this back in minicamp. It was kind of the vibe, especially right before they left for their long break. You could just feel it in the locker room, a lot of players talking about it. And I think there's 2 main reasons. I think number 1 clearly is Derek Carr. Demario Davis talked about it today when asked about it, but it's a difficult situation for players if you think about it. I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, we've got a chance now because we've got an elite quarterback. Well, the backup on the team is Jameis Winston, who was the quarterback last year. So nobody wants to say anything bad about what was going on before. They're just excited about what Carr has brought to the table. I think he's better than almost everybody thought he was going to be. And so I think that's lifted everyone in the building, including the coaches, including the head coach, who went out on a limb to get him and really put all their eggs in this one basket, and they pulled it off. And I think Derek Carr's been everything and more than everyone expected. And in this league, a quarterback-driven league where all the rules are written to protect and serve the quarterback, everything is built around the quarterback. When you've got a good one and the Saints are talented enough in all their other phases for the most part, then you've got a chance. And I think that's where we're seeing this optimism come from.
That the way you guys see it as well, Luke and Rod?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, Demario was trying to be cagey today. When he was like, I'm optimistic for undisclosed reasons. So maybe there's some other things that has given them some reason for optimism here. But when the team sees that you spend $150 million on a quarterback who wasn't there on the previous year's team, I think that is a signal to them that They believe in the team itself, right? And I think Derek has just come in and done nothing but assert himself as this great addition to the organization, from the way he plays in the field, to the way he is in the meeting room, to the way he is in the locker room. I think everybody has had just nothing but very positive things to say about him, and it's not always going to be perfect, for sure. I don't think it's like they're dropping Pat Mahomes into this offense, but I think everybody understands that there's a difference on the team this year, and I think it's clear just to us watching it. It looks different and it feels different, and I think that's why we're seeing a confident unit.
And I just kind of piggybacking off of that, I do think Derek Carr is the number one reason, but I think Dennis Allen may be the number two reason behind all that. I just think there's a different level of confidence in him. I know I guess it was the first preseason game. I think we talked about this on the podcast, but he just talked about being a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more in control. And I think you're seeing that in this team's confidence and just the way they're competing in practice. And I think that all that, you tie all that together, teams for the most part probably healthier than they've been in a while. It seems like they're starting to get some, get everybody back. So I just think you put all that together, and that's why you see this belief that they have right now.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, Rod. It's like there's been some injuries. I mean, Ryan Connolly looks like he's going to miss the season. They had offensive lineman, Trey Turner, early in the year, who's probably done for the season. I mean, they've had some, but no major player has a major injury, and that's already a difference from previous years. So it does bring to mind, it's a good time to kind of introduce our season preview concept over at NOLA.com, which we're going to be rolling out starting next week, I think next Thursday, and it will go on every day all the way up until the Friday before the season starts. We'll have something new up on the site, and the theme for this year is the tipping point. And the idea behind this, guys, is that it's, look, the Saints are kind of right on the cusp of, could they compete for a Super Bowl this year? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a universe in which certainly they're the favorite to win the NFC South, get home playoff games. If things go really well and they stay healthy, maybe they could talk about getting that bye in the NFC, and yeah, then you can talk about a Super Bowl run. But on the other side of that sort of precipice, if you're on the tipping point, is if things don't go well this year, if the injuries continue to pile up, if Derek Carr does fail to be consistent, if Dennis Allen shows he can't win the close games, there's going to be some really hard questions asked of this team on a macro level. So a lot hangs in the balance on this season.
Yeah, look, I'll chime in here. I mean, this is a huge year for everyone in the organization: ownership, management, Dennis Allen, Derek Carr. Everyone has a reason for this to be a huge prove-it year. And the fact that they're so confident right now that they're going to be good, I think even underscores that. If for some reason this team is not good, clearly everyone here was wrong again. And they felt this way last year. I mean, there was a ton of optimism. I did that media poll like I always do every year, and everyone picked the Saints to have a winning season. They went 7-10. So, we'll see how it plays out. But I do think there's a lot more valid reasons for optimism. And Rod, you make a great point about Dennis Allen. You talk to people in the building, you talk to players, coaches off to the side, everyone will say he's a different coach this year. He's more confident, he's more comfortable. And that's probably a lot has to do with the fact that he's got a quarterback here. He's overhauled a lot of the defensive coaching staff. This is more his team. It's not Sean Payton's carryover team. And I think that's a big reason why he is more comfortable and confident.
So check out that season preview. We'll have that starting to roll out next Thursday, August the 31st, which is a couple of days after Cutdown Day, which is a couple of days after the Saints play the Texans for not just their last preseason game, but the last preseason game in the entire NFL is Sunday night. So then it'll be regular season time. So let's spend a few minutes on those things. We'll start with Texans and Saints, guys. The third preseason game. There used to be 4, and it was the 4th preseason game then. But the final one is always kind of do you really want to play any starters at all and risk an injury with the regular season 2 weeks away? Or is this just get some people out there, determine roster spots 51, 52, 53, and move on?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. They had, I think, 23 guys sit out the last one. I think they should try to exceed that number this week. They don't need to see anything in a game situation out of these guys, anything that is going to risk getting them hurt. I think the smartest choice. Look, I mean, we all sat down and put together our locks to make the roster, right? And we had at least 38 guys that we could all agree on. And Jeff and Rod had a few more that they agreed on. Don't risk those guys, as many of them as you can, and use this game to give a lot of run to players like Lonnie Johnson and DeMarco Jackson and Ellis Merriweather, guys who are competing for those last 2 or 3 spots on the team, 4 or 5 spots, whatever the case may be, or the practice squad spots. Get as much game film as you can on those guys. And I think, even give them a chance to play something beyond like the basic vanilla offensive and defensive schemes and see what they can do running something that approximates the Saints offense and defense. Because that's the most important thing to get out of this, besides getting your guys to week 1 healthy.
For me, I think the only starters you may see would be Trevor Penning. And, I mean, he's not I guess I don't know if we want to call Andres Pete a starter, but I think he's a guy that, he may play a lot because he hadn't played. So they sort of need to see him and need to kind of get him back into football playing shape so he could easily play the entire first half. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But outside of those 2 guys, I wouldn't expect to see. I can't think of any other starters. I don't know what they do with Alontae Taylor and Paulson Adebo, but I don't really think there's a reason to see those guys anymore either.
Yeah, Jalen Smith, maybe a guy like that hadn't been in the system very long, probably needs reps. Maybe some guys coming back off injury. Andres Pete comes to mind. Just some guys that need reps. But anyone else, Luke and Rod are right. I mean, there's no reason to expose them at all. I mean, this team's a veteran team for the most part, especially their starting units. They're not relying on a lot of unproven people, and they know what they've got in those guys. There's no reason to put them out there.
And Demario Davis is an example. I mean, he's a guy that hadn't played, but you're not going to see Demario Davis out there. There's just no need to see him.
If they do, then Duncan can must. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance to see those guys, right? Because Taylor and Adebo are competing still, but it's like what are you going to see in that week that you haven't seen in the first 2 preseason games, which they both played in, and you haven't seen in 21 training camp practices and 2 joint practices? I think they at some point you got to say we've seen enough, and we got to make our assessment based on the mountain of evidence that we already have.
And with at corner, Marshawn Lattimore missed practice again today. He's the one guy who they think he'll be back, but let's say another week goes by and he's still not practicing. You don't want a Debo or Taylor to get hurt too. Those are the guys you'd play both of them if for some reason Lattimore had to miss some time. So it's the risk just is not worth the extra little bit of information you're going to get. What do we think at quarterback? The Texans have already said they will play C.J. Stroud. He's kind of struggled in a couple preseason games. I think he looked a little bit better toward the end of his time against the Dolphins last week than he did in their opener. Can't even remember who they played in the opener, but it was kind of ugly for C.J. Stroud. Threw a pick on his first attempt. So we will see Stroud for the Texans. Is this Jake Haener all the way for the Saints? Maybe Jameis for a quarter? I mean, what do we think?
I would assume that we're going to see kind of something similar to what we have been seeing. I would kind of assume that we're going to see a lot of Jameis and then Jake Haener for most, if not all, of the second half. And maybe he jumps in there a little bit in the first half in the second quarter or something like that. But I think the only thing that we can say for sure is that Derek Carr is not going to be out there. And if he is, then something's gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, it feels like they'd play Taysom at quarterback or go Wildcat or something before they'd give Carr snaps. Just not worth it. Just not worth it. Anyway, we do want to spend some time talking roster cutdowns because that's coming next, and that's really the big storyline over the next 5 days. You are watching the Saints Insider Podcast. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for those listening there, or subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the like button as well. So Luke, you mentioned this, but here's who we've got as far as roster locks, and we were very conservative with this. Okay, these are the 38 guys that all three of you said yes, they're a lock. There's no way they miss the roster. So a lot of these are not surprises by any stretch of the imagination. This is your starting lineup, your top backups, your top rotation guys, and then a guy like JT Gray, Zach Wood, who just there's no one else who can bring what they bring, and so they're locks. Don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I picked 7 other guys who are, let's say they're looking good for roster spots. I think it would be a pretty big surprise. Traquan Smith maybe not healthy, but everybody else here, Blake Grupe should not be on that.
Yeah,
Traquan Smith's not a kicker, by the way. If somebody's
yeah, we got the wrong slide.
They didn't make any switches on that.
It's all right,
let's take that off. Yeah,
preseason.
Here's your guys on the bubble. That's right. I had one, and then I was redoing it, and anyway. Here's your guys on the bubble. So we figure there's 8 to 9 spots for these guys. Now, this does not include Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended, so he's not going to take up a roster spot, and that means either Ellis Merriweather or Darrell Williams will make the roster as a third running back for those first 3 weeks. But we're not going to worry about that as much as the guys who actually are going to be on that 53. So start breaking this down and tell me where y'all land.
Who wants to go first?
I'm just looking at the list. I'm gonna just kind of point out the guys on this list that I had as locks too. We couldn't get them; they weren't unanimous. But I had Hugo Amadi as a guy I have him on the team. I just think he's going to, get one of those spots. I know that kicker battle is what we've talked about a lot. And talking to Coach Rizzi the other day, who's a special teams coach, he talked about how close the race is and just how both of those guys have been really consistent. So, I do think that's up for grabs, but I think at the end of the day, I think Will Lutz is going to win that spot. I just think they're going to go with the guy with the experience. Blake Grupe has been really good, but he hadn't kicked in an actual NFL game. I think that's a big difference. I think you just kind of go with that experienced guy. And I guess Isaac Yiadom, whose last name I'm probably butchering, he's the other guy I have on this list who I think has kind of earned his spot. And the secondary is like one of the tougher positions on this team. They have a bunch of guys who can play. And so those are my guys who I think that are locks that are on this bubble here.
I'll go next. I actually did not keep a third running back when we were putting our 53 together. I think they can probably get both Merriweather and Darrell Williams through waivers and keep one of them or both of them on the practice squad, and they can call up those guys up to 3 times in a season from the practice squad. So I don't think they have to use a roster spot on a third running back. So of these guys, I also kept Hugo Amadi. I kept Jordan Howden. And on top of that, I also kept Lonnie Johnson. So it's 3 more defensive backs. I think all those guys have Ugo and Lonnie Johnson both have position flex, and they both really can contribute on special teams. I think Jordan Howden has been pretty impressive as a rookie safety. You might even see him play, week 1 in like a dime package or a big nickel package. I kept Will Lutz. I think I agree with Rod. You have to go with the experience there. I kept A.T. Perry. I did not keep Shaq Davis. I saw somebody commented that they think Shaq's going to make the team, and I think he could, but I don't think you keep both Perry and Davis. I think only one of those guys would make it, and that's if they keep 6 wide receivers. I think there's a chance that Traquan Smith starts the year on IR, but if that's the case, he's going to have to make the 53 first, and he's going to have to take up one of those spots first. It's just there's a lot of really hard decisions, I think, at receiver, at DB, and linebacker. Those are the big ones for me. Max Garcia, I think, also has a spot on this team. He's been taking all their reps as their number 2 center, and he also gives them some flex playing left and right guard.
Yeah, I think Max Garcia is definitely on the team. They signed him to be their backup guy. I don't think there's any way they cut him. I'm with you. I don't think they're not keeping 7 receivers. So maybe they cut Shaq Davis, get him on the practice squad, and then activate him if they move Traquan to IR. But most of those spots, people get caught up. I think sometimes we all do, of like looking at the depth and thinking who the best player, this guy. But that's not how the roster's put together. The roster's put together in who's going to be available to help in a game and who's going to be able to play a role on special teams. And so if you keep a Shaq Davis, you're really, he's your sixth wide receiver. He's probably not going to be active on game days for the most part. So, you're looking more for guys like backup linebackers, maybe your eighth or ninth lineman, your backup running back who can help you in a game, because that's really what they're getting prepared to do. And then there's also, I guess, another element of, who might have value on the market that might get picked up, a player you want to protect. We all know the Taysom Hill story and how the Saints were able to get him away from the Packers. That's what you don't want. I also tend to think that we overvalue sometimes some of these players, that, we're myopic looking at the roster thinking, oh my gosh, Shaq Davis, everyone in the league's going to pick him up. And there seems to be that kind of player every year, and they always manage to go right through waivers and end up on a practice squad. There's a lot of receivers and defensive backs in the league at that level, and everyone's got players like that they're going to put on their practice squad. So I don't think there's a big risk in losing him. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Dunk, first of all, but I would say that's why A.T. Perry made mine, because I think he was a guy that a lot of people, just around the league, not necessarily within the league, thought of as maybe like a early day 3 draft pick, and the Saints got him late in round 6, and then he's played well in the preseason, so maybe he's kind of the flip side of that, where he's one of those guys who other people might be higher on now that they've seen him play well. He's just one I wouldn't want to expose to waivers, but I mean, you're otherwise right. I mean, there's a lot of guys like A.T. Perry and Shaq Davis around the league. So it's a lower risk of exposing those guys than it is for some other positions.
I think if the Saints are keeping 6 receivers, I mean, I think this game could be really important for those 2 guys.
Yeah,
I think A.T. Perry was probably in the league, but I think Shaq Davis has really come on, especially the last preseason game and the last couple of practices. And I think it's pretty close right now. And I don't know if you had to make a decision right now. I mean, you probably would lean towards AT just because of what you thought coming into the draft. But I do think Shaq Davis has definitely made up some ground, and this could be a big game that could swing that in either direction, I feel like.
Just for posterity's sake, here's the slide I meant to show with the correct positions. Nice.
So, nice audible. Nice adjustment at the line.
Blake Gillikin, look, Lou Headley is at punter too. We think he's probably Gillikin safer than Lutz. Is that fair to say as far as the specialists?
Yeah, I think so. Just because Groupie's been so good. But yeah,
I'd be shocked if they cut Nick Saldivari after drafting him. I'd be really surprised if that happened. And look, they like Zach Bond. The coaches like Zach Bond a lot more than the fans do. And that's always a good thing. And Zach Bond's a guy that, he has problems. There's a reason they brought in Jalen Smith. There's no doubt. But there's a lot of things they like about him, and especially his special teams work. And he's got some skills that they value. So that's another guy that, it wouldn't shock me, but it would surprise me if they released him.
I don't know if they've ever had a player quite like Jalen Smith, who we saw like 2 plays in the preseason game. Like, oh yeah, he's on the team. But he has been, he's been solid in practice as well. But I mean, it didn't take him long to convince us to give him a spot.
Yeah, and Luke's writing a story about the linebackers, and like Jalen Smith. This was a concern. I mean, I remember Rod mentioning it several times at the beginning of the month about, hey, linebacker depth is a problem. Like if they get anybody hurt and Demario's already banged up, like this is a problem. And it's not just Jalen Smith, but it's almost to the point where now you're going to have to make some tough decisions there, Luke. Doesn't seem like it's such a problem.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things I learned today was that they're actually training Jalen Smith at all 3 positions, which I believe, if I remember correctly, he's played Mike for the majority of his pro career. So they're teaching him how to play Will and Sam in this defense, which is interesting. And I think that's saying they want to keep him around. But it's also because if you're going to be a backup in this defense, like you have to just be able to fill in wherever you're needed. So I think you feel pretty good about those top 4 guys for including Zach Bond in that list. And then after that, like Nephi Sewell, DeMarco Jackson, Ty Summers, Anthony Orge's had a couple nice preseason games. Like they're all like neck and neck. And do they keep 5 linebackers? Do they keep 6 linebackers? Either way, that's 4 guys fighting for 1 or 2 spots. So this is going to be a really, really, really important game for them. And it's not just how they perform on defense. Like, I mean, it might be more important for those guys to go out and flash on special teams, right? And I think I'm with you though, in that I feel a lot better about this position group now that Demario Davis is back on the field and Jalen Smith has had a nice early impact.
Yeah, and look, that injury to Ryan Connolly was tough, man, because I think he was coming on and probably going to make the roster in that special teams role. And, so that's another little bit of a setback in the depth chart as far as who fills that role, because he was really starting to contribute.
Yeah, and don't forget they lost Andrew Dowell for the season too, who's played a lot in a special teams role for them the last couple of years. They got to fill that spot.
Got a question here from Tedra. One guy we did not actually have listed, Smoke Monday. What do y'all think?
I don't think so. I think they keep him on the practice squad if they can get him there, but he just doesn't have as much positional flex as the other guys. I think Jordan Howden is ahead of him because he can play both safety positions, and Ugo Amadi and Lonnie Johnson can both play slot in a pinch, and I think they both offer a little bit more on special teams. Smoke has made some flash plays, but he's an aggressive player who can sometimes that aggressiveness can work against him. And I think he could probably use a little bit more seasoning after he missed all of last year.
It is worth noting on that point, Rod, just real quick, that Marcus May is going to have a 3-game suspension, most likely. Hasn't been announced yet, but that's the typical DUI suspension. So they probably will need an extra safety those first 3 weeks.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that, today they were running some dime packages and Lonnie Johnson was out there with the 1. So he's a guy that, I kind of like his chances of making the team as well.
Yeah, I think he's like the PJ Williams role. And at that point, they look for those guys, like Luke said, that have position flexibility. When you're the backup back there, you want to have the ability to play multiple positions. Again, it goes back to how do you get through a game, right? And you need to have somebody that can be plugged into more than just one position. And they like Smoke Monday, but he's eligible, practice squad eligible, and I think they could clearly get him on the practice squad.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here on this episode of the Saints Insider Podcast. We are going to be back Monday, which is the day before cut down day, and so plenty of roster cut down talk on that day. Probably be just about the whole episode. We'll talk about what we saw Sunday. But as we wrap things up, I'll just go around the room and starting with you, Rod. One thing you're looking for from this Saints-Texans preseason finale on Sunday?
I guess I'll say Andres Peak just because we haven't seen him and just kind of want to see if he can. I think James Hurst has probably done enough to win that left guard position, but I like to see just how he plays, how much he plays, and so that'll be one of the main things for me. And one more thing before we go, I just wanted to say condolences to Steven Sidwell's family. He was the defensive coordinator for during the Dawn Patrol years, and he passed away. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, but Dennis Allen talked about how the defense is, the Dawn Patrol is like the standard. That's what every Saints team wants to be. You want to be like that Dawn Patrol defense. So just thought we should at least mention him today.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Luke Johnson.
I'm looking for to see if this defense can continue to force some turnovers. Right, they've forced 5 through 2 preseason games, and look, this is we were talking about the preseason. This is not necessarily something that's going to carry over, but I think it is very encouraging to me after this team struggled so much last year with just catching interceptions that were there for them or forcing fumbles and jumping on them. It's been really nice to see them do that through 2 weeks, and I want to see if they can continue to carry that into the regular season, even if it's guys who are fighting to make the roster.
And the man of the hour, Jeff Duncan.
I think I'm going to have my eyes on Trevor Penning, man. I've been watching him all preseason. I'm assuming he's going to play. I think that's the one guy where I've still got major questions in that starting lineup. What are they going to get out of the left tackle? It's a critical position on the team. He's had a lot of ups and downs. There's going to be growing pains, and I think the jury is very much out on him. He's got big time talent. You can see it, but man, from down to down, it's inconsistent. And we even saw that last week against the Chargers. So I'm going to be watching Trevor Penning because I think he's on a crash course right now trying to learn how to play left tackle in the NFL.
Yep. And I do want to mention, folks, also we'll have the Saints Insider post-game show after the game on Sunday night. So tune in for that. It'll be here on this YouTube channel. It'll be on our Facebook pages, all of the above. So check us out. It's going to be a little bit late after 10 o'clock on Sunday night, but we will have the post-game show, wrap things up with some stats and visits from these three gentlemen as they exit the Saints locker room. So until then, this has been the Saints Insider Podcast. We'll be back with another full episode on Monday, the 28th, the day before Cutdown Day. So that'll be a big one. Until then, for Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, and Rod Walker, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Saints Insider Podcast.